I will now call upon Curry's Executive Vice President and Provost, Dr. David Serbaki, to present our honorary degree candidate, Michael Curry, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers.
Thank you, President Quigley. Would Board of Trustees member Dr. Ruth Ellen Fitch please bring forward Michael Curry?
Mr. President, it is my huge pleasure to present Michael Curry to receive the honorary degree of Doctor of Business Administration. Michael.
I'm going to give you a degree. Michael Curry. Curry College is both pleased and proud to recognize you today for your exceptional leadership in healthcare and in civil rights. Under your steadfast guidance leading the Massachusetts League of Community Health Centers, the Commonwealth's crucial network of 52 health centers with over 300 sites serving over 1 million patients in our highest risk areas, you were a leader in helping our Commonwealth successfully navigate the COVID-19 pandemic while also addressing inequities in healthcare. As one of the state's and nation's leaders of the pandemic response, you served on a myriad of national, state, and regional task forces and formed important connections and partnerships between political, healthcare, and philanthropic partners, all for the good of those you serve and care so deeply about. This difficult work has led to opportunities you are now pursuing as part of a health equity compact to modernize public health and address long-standing inequity issues that have affected communities. Your lived experience as a child growing up in a housing project in the Roxbury neighborhood of Boston set you on your path for your passions and your commitments of today. As an undergraduate at Macalester College, your drive for civil rights was fueled by difficulties for the few students of color on campus. Your early activism led to your participation in the Million Man March, and from there, a life of volunteerism and service with the NAACP, where you rose to leadership positions. From 2011 to 2016, you served as president of the NAACP's Boston branch. You have also served 3 terms on the National Board of Directors in the Executive Committee, chairing and co-chairing various important initiatives. Earlier in your career, while immersed in government relations, healthcare reform, and healthcare policy as a senior policy advisor at Blue Cross Blue Shield, you concurrently earned a Doctor of Jurisprudence from New England Law. With a deep belief in public service and serving others, your public service includes, among many other duties, serving on the healthcare transition teams for Curry alum Governor Deval Patrick and Boston Mayor Martin Walsh. You also serve on the boards of numerous philanthropic and education institutions and have received much well-deserved recognition and many awards for leadership and advocacy. The latest, last year, when you were named by the Boston Globe as Bostonian of the Year. Your commitment to education, the mission of Curry College, has been demonstrated, among other ways, not only by your teaching, but by your service on the Board of Trustees of Roxbury Community College. You stand before us today as a dedicated citizen who provides thoughtful leadership to improve the lives of others and to change healthcare in Massachusetts and in the nation for the better. On this day, May 22, 2022, we are humbled to honor you and to hear your inspirational message to our graduates. As we celebrate commencement and you become an alum of Curry College as a member of the class of 2022, we proudly, gratefully, and appropriately honor you. Michael Curry, by action of Curry College, the Board of Trustees concurring, and by virtue of the authority vested in me by the Board of Regents of Higher Education of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Business Administration, honoris causa, and admit you to all the rights and privileges thereunto pertaining.
When somebody shares your history, I'm always reminded when I hear someone introduce me that there's something I often say is where I'm from keeps where I'm at in perspective. I'm gonna repeat that. Where I'm from keeps where I'm at in perspective. Lenox Street Housing Projects, Roxbury. A kid who sat on those buses in 1974, 75 during busing. Someone who lost relatives to gang violence and murder in the cities of Boston and across the country. Someone who's witnessed inequities, a student like yourself on campuses fighting back racism and hatred on campuses. I have to remember where I'm from keeps where I'm at in perspective. So I want to start this morning by saying in the African tradition where there's call and response, good morning, graduates. Good morning. Try that again. Good morning, graduates. Good morning. Let us begin this morning by addressing the obvious, the proverbial elephant in the room. This is Curry College, graduation, and my name is Michael Curry. You can't make that up. Thank you, Mr. President. I am not a descendant of Anna Barite and Samuel Silas Curry, at least as far as I know. But my son this morning suggested it is finally time to do Ancestry.com so we can find out if this college is actually named after us. However, regardless of the results of the DNA test, I'm thankful to share the name with a man and woman who understood the transformative power of education. That the words can be delivered with a mastery in the art of elocution, with intentionality and purpose. If I could quantum leap back to 1885 and sit at the table of Anna and Samuel, guess who's coming to dinner? I would share with her that I've also been a lifelong student of oratory, who has studied everyone from Daniel Webster to Frederick Douglass to Winston Churchill to Dr. King to President Barack Obama and even President Donald Trump. For as your founders understood, words do matter. I want to thank you, President Quigley, faculty, and staff for this invitation to provide remarks at this year's commencement. This final rite of passage for these students who you have prepared to enter careers in nursing and public health, business, criminal justice, communication, and so many other professions that are desperately awaiting their talent, their energy, and their training. I am humbled and honored to take part in this special celebration, and to witness dreams being realized, and families and communities being lifted up by the degrees you will bestow on these students, now graduates. I also want to thank Curry College for bestowing on me the honor of receiving an honorary degree. How amazing is that? I'd like to dedicate my remarks today to two people. One is a good friend, Cara Burge, a 2009 graduate of Curry College who lost her life to cancer. My mentor and friend, Leonard C. Alkins, who for over a decade held down the Boston NAACP, a volunteer job fighting for civil rights in the city of Boston. He too died of cancer recently. To the parents, children, and other family members who have had to share these graduates with their studies and endure the late night phone calls, the last minute requests for a babysitter, the panic attacks between a test that was coming up or a paper that was due. Or they just didn't know if they would graduate. I would say thank you and congratulations to you. And I would ask now that the graduates please stand and join me in applauding the people who helped you get to this point. Thank you. Graduates, we celebrate you today. I want to express our sincere appreciation for your resilience and your commitment to completing your studies. While the world has spent the last 2 years battling a pandemic that has now taken over 6.3 million lives worldwide, over 1 million here in the United States, and well over 19,000 here in Massachusetts. Alex, these are staggering numbers. And my prayers go out to any of you who have lost loved ones, colleagues, and friends. But I'm compelled today to remind you that we can't let ourselves get weathered to disease and that much loss of life. As you enter your respective careers, you will be responsible for addressing the failures of our system, our broken, fragmented, underfunded public health infrastructure, the fragility of our economy and of our neighbors' finances, the higher rate of disease that can be tracked by race and zip code, the burnout, the shrinking and aging, retiring and ill-prepared workforce, our stubborn denial of climate change, and the inability to address emergency preparedness. It wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when. We have to do better. And because of you, I believe we will. Since March of 2020, you've had to shelter in place, quarantine, socially distance, embrace virtual learning, mask up, be contact traced, get tested regularly, take the shot more than once, and consider your own mortality. In all of this, we're trying to keep your eyes on the prize. Please take this moment now, after 4 or more years of very hard and long work, to take a deep breath. Really, take a deep breath. And appreciate that you've made it. And give yourselves a round of applause. Over the entire course of your studies here at Curry College, you have also had to deal with a national reckoning on racism in America. You watched as many of our cities erupted with protests and civil unrest in the wake of police-involved killings of Black men and women, many of which are now memorialized on video, on social media. No justice, no peace. Hands up, don't shoot. Rang out from every corner of this nation and really sounded to me like an echo from the past. From slavery to Reconstruction to Red Summer to Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma to Birmingham and Selma. The people united will never be defeated. We shall overcome. You are among the billions who've had to view that 9 minutes and 29 seconds in Minneapolis where George Floyd's life was taken over and over again, leaving many of us to question, will we ever get this equal protection, due process, justice, liberty stuff right? We can't allow ourselves to remain weathered to injustice, as we must remember Dr. King's warning that, quote, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Ukraine, the synagogue attacked in Colleyville, Texas, the attacks on Asian Americans in New York City, or a Taiwanese church in California, or the attacks on our constitutionally protected rights, in the attacks and racial hatred right here on the Curry College campus. Those topics of criminal justice, health equity, wealth gaps, disparate housing and home ownership, voter suppression and engagement, racial justice went from your classrooms to our homes, to our boardrooms, to the streets. We're now being awakened by the proclamation, Black Lives Matter. And occasionally the retort, all lives matter. But I ask the question today, do they? When so many of our prisons are disproportionately filled with Black and brown men and women. When so many of those who have been infected, hospitalized, and died of COVID-19 were Black 2 to 3 times more likely. And they were essential workers, medically vulnerable with comorbidities and on the front lines of fighting this disease. 20 years after the Institute of Medicine's report and 53 years after the Kerner Commission report, they are still unequally treated and unequally burdened by the 80% of societal factors that drive our health status, now referred to as the social determinants of health: poverty, food, housing insecurity, racism. As my good friend Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman Pressley, who introduced me on Friday when I got a very nice award from the Mass Black Lawyers Association as a trailblazer, she said, those closest to the pain should be closest to the power. That's the model of community health centers that I get to represent every day, where you go to a board meeting at a health center, 52 across this state, sitting in the boardroom, half of them have to be patients at the health center. Those closest to the pain have to be closest to the power. So we can finally realize this nation's promise: one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So again, I ask you the question, do all lives matter? As many of our law schools, medical schools, universities, and colleges writ large do not reflect the rich diversity of this nation. And our grade schools and secondary schools continue to provide an inequitable chance for our children 5 decades since desegregation. I would ask that you consider today that there is a little Black girl, a little Latino boy right now in Southside Chicago, North Minneapolis, East St. Louis, or right here in Roxbury, who is meant to find a cure for cancer, crack the code on poverty, or explore the next stage of genetic research, or discover the next technological advancement, or solve for the climate change. But we'll never know them, him or her, because they don't have the academic rigor. They've internalized racism. They're in fear of the violence in their communities and suffering from untreated trauma, or we just don't see them. It's been just over a week since the murder of 10 people at the Top supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and we again find ourselves asking the question, do Black lives matter? What is our responsibility to confront hate and ignorance in this society, whether it is in our families, or on our campuses, or in the communities in which we live? This replacement theory is born out of tribalism, a fear of diversity, equity, inclusion, what Isabel Wilkerson speaks to in her book, Caste, and the vitriol and political divisions that have marked the last several years is real. The hate that hate produced. 200 mass shootings since the beginning of the year, which would amount to just over 10 per week. When I think about you, and I've been watching from a distance, you as students on the Curry College campus, I've been praying for you, as others have said. I know what it's like to sit on a campus and be afraid to go to class. To not know if the people sitting next to you appreciate your humanity and see you as an equal. I know what it's like to show up for my colleagues, my fellow students, when there's anti-Semitism on campus. I've seen it, I've been there, I was where you were many years ago. I want you to know, as the Anti-Defamation League publishes the results, we have 2,700 or so last year anti-Semitic acts across the country. This you can't be weathered to. We're so weathered to things in our society. We get used to it. It becomes normalized because we don't think we can do anything about it. I think the number is somewhat 7,000 or so hate crimes in the last year. We can't be weathered to hate. James Baldwin, a writer and activist who became a critical voice for the disenfranchised and marginalized in the 1950s and 60s, said, "Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced." As you sit here today ready to embark on the next phase of your life, I ask you, what are you prepared to face? Are you willing to utilize whatever privilege, position of influence or power you have to deliver on the promise of this democracy? Or as the African proverb reminds us, rivers are filled one drop at a time. Will you teach equitably? Will you provide care in a culturally competent and proficient way? Will you dispense justice fairly? Will you seek to build back better in a way that truly lifts all boats? Will you speak up when hate is in your presence? Will you allow truth to catch up to history by revisiting the nation's past and connecting the dots to the inequities of today, all around us? Graduates, increasingly the masks are coming off. We can see each other again. Our voices are becoming much clearer. We are again gathering, hopefully, with a deeper appreciation for the human connection. That hug, that handshake, that nod, that chance meeting outside on the campus grounds were always critically important to our social emotional health, as well as to our sense of community. Let's come back with a sense of urgency to tackle some of the most stubborn problems of our time. Let's use all that we've learned through struggle to create a brighter future, one that has less division, more truth, and love. What would a graduation speech be without some advice? I am 53 years old, becoming 54 this year. Yeah, I said, who did for that 53? I still feel 30-something. But what would a graduation speech would be without just a few points of advice? Ms. Thompson at Boston Latin Academy, where I went, she said, Irish woman, long blonde hair, one of my best teachers I've ever had in my life. She said, Michael, question everything. Verify. Look it up yourself. Someone else gave me advice, said, Michael, you should be your own worst critic. Don't let a boss come in and tell you that your work is not timely, that your writing's not good. You should be evaluating and your own worst critic. Get ahead of that feedback. Great advice. Avoid people, places, and things that don't keep you on your path to greatness. Toxic people, bad job situations, drugs, name it. You have a purpose. And the goal here is I talk to young people all the time. I tell kids all the time that there's a track meet. And I do this in Roxbury or when I'm traveling across the country. I said, you're in poverty right now. You're dealing with these circumstances. You look at the track meet and there's 20 hurdles. And you're looking at the 20 hurdles and you're overwhelmed by the fact you got to run 20, but you're going to do it. 20 hurdles represents poverty. Maybe like me, coming from a single parent home, living communities with high rates of morbidity and mortality. Name what those hurdles are for you. But every day that you're running that race, you have the choice to add more hurdles. So I'm going to ask you, as you think about your own life and your own challenges, don't add more hurdles. I was a guest speaker at a prison recently. And I walked into the room, and it's actually a jail, and the sheriff and his staff said, Michael, thank you for coming to speak to the inmates, all black men, mostly black men. And they went to the door, and they left, and they locked this big old door. And I was a little shocked for a second. And I was standing in front of these men, and I was thinking, what am I going to say to these brothers who are locked up in jail? And one of the first questions I asked them, but I ask you the same question, do you love yourself? Do you love yourself? Because if you love yourself, you work out. You maintain your health. You go to see a medical provider. You love yourself. You take care of your mental health. You raise your children. You try to keep healthy relationships. You keep toxic people out of your circle. If you love yourself, you do certain things to show that you love yourself. And then last but not least, my graduation advice to you is dream big. No matter what anybody else says, dream big. People told me, well, you may not go to college. You can't be a lawyer. People from your neighborhood can't be a lawyer. I sit here today thinking of Frederick Douglass's quote, that great abolitionist. He said, it's not just the height you reach, but the depths from which you come. It's not just the heights you reach, but the depths from which you come. My good friend and colleague on the National NAACP Board of Directors, Chairman Emeritus Rosalind Brock, has a mantra that she took from the 2011 movie The Help, which is this. And my message, my parting message to you: courage will not skip this generation. Courage will not skip this generation. In this sea of graduates, there lies a Frederick Douglass, a Sojourner Truth, a Ida B. Wells, a W.E.B. Du Bois, a Mary White Ovington, a Moorfield Story, a Kwame Ture, a Minister James Reed, a Ruth Bader Ginsburg, a Thurgood Marshall, a John Lewis, a Malcolm X, or a Dr. King. I end today's remarks by saying courage must not skip this generation. Thank you.